Welcome to the bizval podcast. At bizval, we are passionate about empowering entrepreneurs the world over to understand and unlock the value in their business. We work with advisors and entrepreneurs to demystify the value creation process when building a business. At bizval, we know how tough it is to grow and run a business, which is exactly why we've made valuations simple to understand, accurate, and affordable. Our unique blend of tech and touch ensures that you always receive the best service, authentic human engagement, and data-led insights to ensure that you build a business that provides you with freedom and choice. In the bizval podcast, we showcase stories of real entrepreneurs and advisors, sharing lessons and inspiration from their journeys to make your journey just that little bit easier.
Today, I'm absolutely delighted to have with me, for those South Africans, Candice Mullins. We were just chatting before the show. Leanne Manners is a well-known South Africa presenter, radio personality, and we were just having a little bit of a laugh because as Candice came on the show, I said, "You know who you look like?" And she's before I even mentioned it, she's like, she gets asked for the selfies all the time. So Candice, it's wonderful to have you. Candice is the co-founder and managing director of Omni, and we'll go into that a little bit later. But Candice, great to have you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for the compliment that I look like Leanne Manners. But as said, it's not the first time I've heard that.
So listen, there's high expectations then, I guess, for this discussion. But today we're going to be talking a little bit about your personal journey. For our international listeners, you grew up in Johannesburg, big city in South Africa, and you studied then in the Eastern Cape, which is a bit more rural, small town, and you decided to base your business in a small town when you founded Omni. So today's chat's going to be a little bit about that, your founding story. I think there's a really cool angle, and maybe you were ahead of your time, because I think post-COVID, we saw a lot of people moving from the city, but you did this 15, 20 years before that. So today we want to kind of go into that, the story about Omni, a little bit about your story, and we'll dive right in.
Fantastic.
Great. So Candice, let's start at the beginning. Okay. You grew up in Johannesburg, big city, went to school there. And then for your university studies, you moved to Grahamstown, which, or now known as Makanda, which was effectively a university town. Tell us a little about your early years. What shaped you? What drew you into accounting and tax work? Let's start at the beginning.
It's quite interesting that you asked that. And to be very honest with you, accounting was so far off my radar. I mean, I loved animals. I thought that I would do zoology. The attraction about Rhodes was that it was a university town. In those days, you had the Maritzburg and Rhodes University as the English-speaking small universities. And I loved the appeal of Rhodes because it was small. And obviously, a lot of my friends went there. And although I didn't go with accounting in mind, I didn't do accounting at school. I accidentally landed on accounting because I found out that I was good at it. So eventually, although I wanted to start with a BSc, and I actually even delved into law, when I finally did accounting it was actually my second year of university, I was just good at it. I was just natural at it, which I suppose I should have expected, considering that my dad and my stepdad were both chartered accountants. So it was easy for me. And my boyfriend at the time was doing DBAC. So it was the path I followed. It was the path of least resistance. And I really found that I enjoyed it.
Yeah, but I guess back in those days as well, I mean, I can relate, nowadays there's just so many options in terms of careers. I mean, YouTubers and all sorts of things. Back then, it was a case of you become an accountant, a lawyer, maybe a teacher or a doctor. That was kind of your choice, right? A scientist was like a little bit off the wall. But you moved to Grahamstown, I guess, small town. For some of our international listeners, as university towns have a bit of a reputation for kind of maybe being a little bit of party towns. I went to a university just down the road, so our big adversaries at inter-university days was Rhodes University. So, all the stories that go along with that. But but how was that sort of adjustment period for you coming from big city, to small university town? Like, what were some of the sort of, challenges you had to go through in making that transition? Or was it just like, hey, phase of life, I'm a student, I'm going to just fit in, or was that something
Yeah,
that,
it was quite funny because I used to be called city girl. I mean, it was so ridiculous. In fact, I think I don't think of myself as a city girl, but I suppose I was. But
yeah.
I adapted to small town. I was so comfortable very, very
Mm,
soon, apart from the weather, because you have 5, 6, 10 seasons in one day in Grahamstown, Makanda.
yeah.
But I loved the small town. And it was the first time that I started experiencing community. What is real
Mm,
community? And by the time that was in my back year, where I actually met my partner, which we'll talk about, my business partner, Simon White,
mm,
I had fallen in love with small town living. I'd fallen in love with community living. And in actual fact, I had met at that stage a farmer. And a lot of my time now was spent in the sort of country districts and the little country clubs and just seeing how people rally together in communities and how they work together.
mm,
And a lot of the thinking and a lot of the value system that's now in Omni was because of what I recognized being in a small town. It's authentic, it's helpful, it's
mm,
about team, it's about empathy, it's about all the things that were inherently in my value system, which blossomed when I found myself in this small town. And then having met Simon White in my honors year, also with a very similar value system I could see because he grew up in Grahamstown. It
yeah.
it planted a seed.
Mm. Yeah, I think we're going to dive into that a little bit later because, I think
Mm,
these sort of early experiences, they lay the foundations for, the value systems of our businesses. And, even though you're living in a small town, and something we'll talk about just now is you've always had a very sort of global outlook. We were chatting before the show with your boys being off to Aspen and ski schools and all those sorts of things, and I think that unique combination is, I think, what truly makes Omni really impactful. So we're going to get into that a little bit later, but let's go back to those early days. You qualified as an accountant. You did your articles sort of in a small town practice, and I guess in those days, like there was all this pressure to be a Big Four articles, do your training in a Big Four business. You did your sort of heavy lifting, if you want to call it that, in a smaller firm. How do you think that shaped you? What were some of the experiences through that which kind of laid the foundation for where you are today?
yeah, it's very interesting. I actually started my articles at Deloitte with as I call him, Sykes, Simon White.
Yeah.
And I was miserable. So I
Mm,
was at Deloitte in Woodmead. I didn't like the Big Four experience. I found that I was a number. That I wanted more, we didn't even see a tax return in that year, for example, and tax was certainly my passion.
yeah.
Then, when I decided to move back to the Eastern Cape, I transferred my articles to what was then Fisher Hoffman PKF
Yeah.
in Little Grahamstown. And that is when I really enjoyed the article experience. I was
Mm,
given a lot more autonomy. The partner in charge of me at the time was James Brunt. Sadly, he's no longer with us. But he
mm,
allowed us to sort of pave our way and develop our own working papers. And funny enough, I think I was one of the first clerks to have a laptop, and I'm not joking. And we were using Lotus 123, and I designed the auditing working papers on that. And I really, really felt alive. And because
yeah.
I was touching the audit experience and I was getting tax experience and I was getting even a little bit of accounting, forecasting, budgeting experience, and I was dealing with the clients themselves face to face in a small
Mm,
community, I just I really enjoyed that experience. And also I
mm,
had a very nice team that I worked with as well. So there were so many pluses around it, and I learned so much more, I felt, in the small
mm,
town experience. And in fact, I was even managing a lot of the clients at that stage because the partner in charge said, "Okay, you go for it." So
Mm.
it was a very good experience.
Yeah, and I think a few things in that is one is I think part of the challenge with the big firms and that is, you almost specialize too early. You have to kind of make a choice,
Mm,
and
mm.
Big Four, it's like, are you going into banking or insurance and sometimes you don't have a choice of which of those divisions you get put in, and
That's so
it's
true.
very structured. But you kind of, you had space to learn, you had space to experiment. I guess the stakes are probably a lot lower when you auditing, the small town country club as opposed to when you're auditing one of the big five banks, for argument's sake. So you have that space to kind of, yeah, make mistakes without it changing the world, so to speak.
No, 100%. I mean, I realized quite early when I was at Deloitte that I was not going to be a big corporate animal. I
Yeah.
didn't want to be, I like being a big fish in a small pond rather than a small fish in a big pond. And I have to admit, and I'm putting my hand up high, but that was it was in my comfort zone. And I felt I could
Yeah.
have far more of an impact there. And you can see
Yeah.
your impact. It's far more tangible.
Absolutely. So look, we spoke about your background and tell us a little bit of what happened after articles, and then what led to, your decision to start Omni, and specifically, by now we know you're a small town girl at heart. You're not a city girl. So what happened after articles? What took you to the journey of starting Omni, and then why specifically, start in a small town?
So interestingly enough, when I was at when I was doing my articles, I
Mm,
was approached by Rhodes University,
mm,
and I think it was Kevin Marie at the time and Lilla Stack, who were my direct bosses when I moved there. They really dangled the carrot and they said, you should really consider, the academic life and it's wonderful and you can have your babies and all those sorts of things. So it was quite enticing at the time to
mm,
to move to Rhodes University, and they offered me a lovely start package and a lot of freedom, and
mm.
that's what I decided to do. So I ended up moving to Rhodes University. I was a senior lecturer there for 7 years,
Yeah.
but then I also quickly learned that academic the academic world is also not a world that I wanted to be in. But the best part
Mm,
about it was I built a really, really good foundation in tax knowledge
mm.
and
Yeah.
accounting knowledge. I lectured accounting three for the most part, and I did lecture a little bit of tax one during my stint there. And I had my two babies while I was working there. Funny enough, I have made lifelong friends out of those students. So many of those students still get hold of me today. And I've met them along the way through my
Yeah.
partners, through work, through all sorts of platforms and networking platforms, and they come up to me at airports and all sorts of places. Oh, Candice, it's so lovely to see you. You were such an inspiration, and I'm so glad if I changed five people's lives, and it was
Mm,
great. And I also could give them this sort of experience of the big four versus small town, and it was so lovely to relay my life experience up until that point with them. Although I wasn't that much older than my students at the time, because there was sort of maybe a 5, 6 year gap between me and them. But it was a
Yeah.
fun time, and I embedded my technical knowledge over that time. And
Mm,
I did quite a lot. We did academic papers. We were encouraged to do research. I started my tax art,
mm,
my tax masters. I still haven't finished it to this day, and that's one regret I have. I might revisit it at some stage, but something intervened, and I I was encouraged at the time to moonlight because
mm.
again, as a life of academic, it's economically it's not a great life choice if you're wanting to send children to private schools, etc. So we were encouraged to moonlight, and I did have some work that I was engaged in at the time. And even at that point, I had exposure to what we now find ourselves specializing in are ecotourism, conservation, a lot, game reserves. And I was consulting with a lot of those sort of organizations, both international clients and local. But it's sort of set the path to where a lot of our client base sits to this day. One of the experiences I had and interacted with was, I'm not going to mention his name because I don't want to obviously, that's client privilege, but a great entrepreneur, property developer approached me and he actually said, would you like to come and work for me? And I said, no, I'll tell you what, I'm not going to work for you. I'd like to open my own practice and you can be my first client. And he had, I think, about 40 companies at the time. And we literally opened the tax house. At that time, I had another business partner who joined me, and we opened the tax house. And that was in 2006. And the tax house eventually evolved into Omni, which it is today. And Simon White is now my partner, and he joined Omni in 2015.
Okay, so I mean, it's quite a backstory, and I say it's amazing how, these kind of pieces sometimes just kind of fall into place, whether it's what do you call synchronicity or serendipity, so even going and building that base of knowledge in, university, kind of laid a foundation. You say dealing with international clients, you need to know tax law, you need to know all those things. You may not have known it at the time, to start a family, and maybe that's something we can talk about a little bit later, as being a mom, and kind of not getting that stuff out the way, but being able to build a life and build a solid foundation for what you've built now. And I think it's easy to look at it through the rearview mirror. I guess at that time you weren't sitting there with this grand plan of saying, hey, one day I'm going to be this, like powerful businesswoman running a fantastic business and that, but you kind of went with the flow. You saw the opportunities when they came up. And I love that story with your former client where you said, listen, be my first client. So often you get just one person who kind of is that catalyst to start something. And as you said, you started as the tax house. And that was 2006. So we almost coming up on your 20-year anniversary, which is which is next year. Yeah. And Simon joined in 2015. So that was kind of like 9 years down the line. So let's jump to that. And Simon obviously is a key part of Omni. So you almost had sort of a bit of a shift from tax house and you created Omni sort of around the mid 2015. Let's talk a little bit about that change. What one is, why did you decide to bring Simon into the business, and why did you decide to rebrand at that stage?
I know that you brought us forward, but to understand where that happened, I'm going to take you back a little bit. So when we studied at Rhodes, so he actually did his undergrad at Maritzburg, and then he did his honors at Rhodes, and we were in our DeBac class together. He was a big rower, so he always used to be late, the poor guy, because he was rowing, and then he'd run into the class.
Up at 4:30 a.m.
I was there first, and I got the great seat, and I sat. We had a horseshoe kind of room, and he was always closest to the poor lecturer. But anyway, we had a good laugh about that. But he and I, we always had a connection. And we actually, he said to me, "I'm gonna literally go out to the big world, and I'm gonna do the whole corporate thing." And I mean, he did so well in corporate. He really did. He was FD of Builders, under the Massmart Group. He worked for breweries for a while, and he made many connections in that world, as did I when I was an academic. And I think those two worlds have helped us a lot in the platforms and the networking where we are today. But we always had the conversation, even when he was in his commercial space, and he used to come back to Grahamstown to visit his parents or his dad on Table Farm. Cans, when are we going to do this together? And we really sort of had a long discussion, and we knew each other pretty well by then. We've obviously learned more about each other, because you really do when you're in business together. But we knew that we were very different. and in a good way. It's really, really important. And we identified we had complementary skill sets,
Yeah.
and although we had the complementary skill sets, I understood that we also had the same value system and the same goal set in mind. So
Yeah.
when he said, "Listen, I'm doing this," his kids were old enough, and a big pool in Grahamstown are the private schools here. Both of our
Yeah.
children went to St Andrews, or I've only got boys, but he's got two girls, DSG and St Andrews. It's a fabulous
Mm-hmm.
school. Uh, Simon's son is sixth generation. My sons are fifth generation at this amazing school, and also there's a whole network there that's supported us. So although we're in this little town, it didn't restrict us at all with what we could do and what we could offer. And I think people knew us well enough to
Yeah.
understand that just because you're in a small town does not mean that the service offering is any less. And in
Mm-hmm.
fact, with both of our backgrounds, in fact,
Mm-hmm.
1+1=5 kind of thing, or 10.
Yeah.
And that's what
Mm.
we recognized. And it was just a natural fit when he came. We actually only rebranded in uh, about 2020, 19, 20, around then.
Yeah.
That was a very long exercise because you have to, what name are we going to call of ourselves? And is it available as a trademark? Is it available on SIP-C? Sure, that took a long time to find the name. But when it
Yeah.
landed, I mean, I was just trying to brainstorm, brainstorm, brainstorm. And like, I think it was 10 or 11 o'clock at night, and I was lying in bed, and I suddenly said, Omni. Oh, that means everything. It's a derivative of everything in Latin, everything for small business, everything
Yeah.
finance for small to medium business. Oh, I phoned Sykes. I said, Sykes, I've got, he said, I love it. Is it available? And it was available. And then once we had the name, then it was about building the brand. And it was real teamwork between him and
Yeah.
I, but not just him and I, the whole team under us.
Mm.
And it was such an exciting time. And it was very good. And we obviously did quite a lot of interviews with our clients,
Mm.
the communities, do you think we should change? And they said, yes, it's a restrictive name, tax house, when you're doing so much more than that. So
Yeah.
here
Yeah.
we are, and we have never regretted that name change. We absolutely love it. It's done us well. It's done us proud, and yeah, I've got my Omni shirt on. Everything's Omni, but it's a great brand, and we're
Yeah,
very
I
happy
love it. It's
that we did
it's
it.
short, sharp, to the point, and as you say, tax house. Whilst it says what you do, so you guys do so much more than that.
We
You're more
do.
than accounting partners. You're more than tax partners. You're more than advisors. You kind of. I think you probably in a sense are. Like before, things like fractional CFOs and all that sort of thing became like, a buzzword. You guys were doing that in any case. I think also just to rewind a little bit, we talk as though running business out of a small town was easy. Nowadays we take things like Zoom and communications that for granted. But I do want to touch on that a little bit, and I know I'm jumping around back. When you started this and you had clients, all over the place. It was pre-Zoom. It was it was dial-up internet at best. You spoke about, having early day laptops and that. So, like, what were some of the challenges back in those early days? I know I'm taking you back, Candice, but in actually not being in those physical locales, was it, did you have to travel a lot? Did you build your client base out of the local community, then expand? Was it a function of networks from the schools and, Simon's Deloitte and Joburg and PE networks? Like, how did you guys actually build a client base when you were in a small town let's call it the internet economy?
I have to say, still to this day, word of mouth is the strongest marketing tool for us.
Mm,
If we do something well and they tell their friend and tell their friend and tell their friend and they come to us. Our focus is on owner managed small to medium businesses and
yeah.
the whole ecosystem around them. And I mean, we like to be their business partner. Obviously, we don't offer audit. I mean, that's not a world that we wanted to be in. We didn't want to be in a grudge purchase environment. We literally wanted to be advisor and all of those sorts of things.
Yeah, yeah.
The difficulty, obviously, was the value proposition, and again, um, it in a small town there isn't money around, so
Mm-hmm.
you end up doing a lot more for a lot less, and that was very
Mm-hmm.
difficult. And that is when it was an absolute no-brainer to me to expand beyond the walls of Grahamstown and go and
Yeah.
seek work in the big towns, in the big cities,
Mm-hmm.
and try and compete with those firms there. So yes, I certainly did a lot of traveling. And again, it was wonderful for me because I could be with my children, which is the main reason why I did stay in Grahamstown, is to
Mm-hmm.
be closer to my children, to be a mother to them, but yet still be able to have a career and a career on my own terms, a
Mm-hmm.
career that I could be in control of. I didn't want to have a boss. I wanted to be
Mm-hmm.
my own boss. Although I have worked long hours, I was able to get a life work balance. So there is a trade-off in that, I'm sure that if I'd done this in Joburg, I would be a lot richer now. But I'm
Yeah.
richer for experience, and I'm richer for having had that time with my family, and for the relationships I've nurtured in the small community, real
Yeah.
authentic relationships. And Omni is quintessential Eastern Cape values. We are
Mm-hmm.
pioneers. So a lot of what we did, it was real pioneer stuff. We didn't want to
Mm-hmm.
be the sort of stock standard small town accountant doing, shuffling papers using historical pastels. And and especially when Sykes joined, we really
Mm-hmm.
went onto this whole cloud um, platform. And we had to really, it was so hard to sell the
Mm-hmm.
cloud platform, the zeros, the decks, all these things that we use to very narrow-minded, old-fashioned
The
owner
sports club
businesses
with a
who,
double ledger
yeah, they,
still
they don't want to know about
manually.
it. Not only that, to sell it to the staff as well. It was a very
Yeah.
difficult thing. So we had years of toil, I must tell you, to get the buy-in for the tech stack that allowed us to be mobile, that
Yeah.
allowed us to be better accountants, in the moment accountants, and even, looking into the future of our clients, and really taking along them on this evolution of their business journey with them. So
Mm.
we really then had a completely different mindset, and we just pushed and pushed, and we started. Well, long ago, we set up a Johannesburg base, and
Yeah.
we started staffing it up. It was very difficult to manage people remotely, and only
Mm.
really when COVID happened,
Mm.
we already had the structures in place. It was there. So it was literally switching a button on, and we
Wow.
had
So you
already
you were
done
kind of,
it.
you were kind of ahead of your time in a sense. You had laid a lot of the foundations. You had put cloud
We
technology in
had,
place, and then when it happened, it was like, okay, you're already remote. You didn't have to move from Johannesburg to the small. You were already there, and the world changed, and you were ready for it. And like so often we talk about business and being in the right time at the right place, and I can imagine that kind of led to a period of quite I mean, maybe explosive is the wrong word, but I mean it's kind of led to period of you guys going to the next level, so to speak. I love that story because so at the time you don't always realize those platforms that you're building, and in hindsight, it's easy to look back and pretend to be all smart and think that, oh, we planned this with intent. If COVID didn't happen, maybe your business wouldn't have like had that, let's call it, that next step, but it did, and you were ready for it, right?
no, we were. And I mean, I was talking about the huge differences between Simon White and myself. I'm very instinctive. Um,
Yeah.
and Sykes is more the planner and the strategist, and
Mm,
obviously again in line with our goals. But if I feel something in my gut, I go for it.
yeah.
And a lot of what we did was that kind of instinctive think this is going to work. And not everything's worked. We've tried things that we've had to sunset, like our clients have done. You've got to try and fail, and then you try something else. But the best part about it is that we're still in the Eastern Cape, and I love being here. And of course, I'm in Cape. We've got a Cape Town presence, we've got a Durban presence, and we've got a Joburg presence. And I love visiting, but I always love coming home back to this authentic, community-driven, relationship-driven place that really drives our value system, right through, the relationships with our clients, our staff, and, all of our associates.
And that's true authenticity. I can relate a lot to that. From a bizval perspective, we obviously, our core team is based in Cape Town. But we've got great business in the US and in the UK, and I guess it's no different. And I think we take that to the world. So it's not about losing what you are. It's actually about taking the good of what of what you do and your home and all of that sort of stuff, and then being proud of that and serving in other and geolocales, and I suppose in your business as well, you do have international clients. You may not have offices in London and whatever, but you've got clients who've moved to London and have stayed with you and etc. But the home is still where the heart is, so to speak, and I think that just shines through in the way you do business. And I think from when we first connected with Simon and yourselves and that. Yeah, there was almost this bond. Maybe it's because I grew up in the Eastern Cape. Maybe it's something in the water there, but it does
I think
it does
it
bring
is.
you
It's in the
together.
air. It's
Yeah.
as you get off the plane in Rebecca, you just
Yeah.
smell it. You like it's in you, and you go, "Yay, I'm home." So yeah, it's very very much like that.
So Candice, I wanted to just touch on a few things, and we got quite off-piste from the original sort of like script that
That's
we had kind
okay.
of planned out. But I think there are two things I want to drill down into. We've spoken a lot about Simon, and Simon's clearly a bit more camera shy than you, because when we were setting up this podcast, he said, "Listen, Candice is the pro. She's doing it. I'm going to be in the background." But I want to talk a little bit about, you and him and your sort of, let's call it co-founder or partner relationship. What are some of the things that really stand out? You've spoken about your sort of complementary skill set, but when, for any business owner thinking about bringing on a co-founder or partner, what are some of the traits that can really make a big difference to your success? And perhaps also, what are some of the red flags, I guess, that entrepreneurs should watch out for when they're selecting a co-founder or partner?
Well, the most important thing is common values. If you've
Mm,
got a common value and a common goal, you can get through anything. Um,
mm,
you know, they obviously are. I mean, it's like a marriage, hey.
yeah.
So going in, I think you need to very much lay. You have to have your ANC document drawn up and your shareholder agreement, and that has to be
Mm,
very clear and understood, and it
mm,
has to cater for all the worst case scenarios.
mm,
Um, and what the hope is then that you never ever have to use that.
yeah.
Um, but and in the beginning, because sort of Simon was moving to me, not the other way around.
Mm,
I had kind of the controlling vote, and I never had to use it. And then
mm,
eventually we just said, well, that's silly. Let's remove that. And we never
mm,
ever had to use it. Why? Because we had mutual respect. We have
yeah.
always had mutual respect, and we really trust each other. So it's
Mm,
and those things are really, really important. The red flags is that when the blood starts to boil, go for a walk, remove yourself from the
mm.
situation, walk around the block, and think about really what you're trying to achieve, and go
In the
back to
case
your
of
values.
grandson, walk around the city. It'll take you.
Walk around as it will. Don't sweat, don't sweat the small stuff. Don't sweat the
Yeah,
small stuff. You decide where you must hold your ground,
yeah.
and those things. Also, you've got to understand what possibly your partner is going through. There may be stuff going
Mm,
on at home or stresses at home, and so you've got to be empathetic. But
mm,
mutual respect is really critical. Common goals, and if there is a serious point of conflict, it needs to be nipped in the bud.
mm,
It needs to be nipped in the bud. I think regular communication does
mm,
circumvent that to some degree. And don't make decisions on your own, big decisions. You know,
Mm.
uh, I love the fact that even on smaller stuff, we consult each other all the time. We
Yeah.
sense check things, especially if it's going to affect each other. We sense check it with
Mm.
each other and with our team.
Mm.
And yeah, I've noticed sometimes the team will be split, and some people will take my side and some people will take his side. But we actually end up always coming to the right decision.
Mm.
And the best part is that when you make a decision, even if it was contentious, but you've made a decision, both partners live with it and
Yeah.
support each other if something goes wrong. You've
Yeah.
got to have each other's back. You have to be a
Mm.
united front, and that's with your clients and it's with your staff.
Yeah, I think that's so important, I mean, just, having those tough conversations, as you say, it's a bit like a marriage or, like any relationship, communication's key, alignment's key, all of those things. And I guess in a small town, there's nowhere to hide either, right? Because, you've got resolved issues at work, you're going to bump into them at the local, at the one restaurant in the main street or at the
Yes,
school
and that's
sports
no lie.
day.
There is only one restaurant in the main street.
Um, Candice, I want to spend just a little bit of time talking about, we've spoken about the backstory, but I really want to talk about Omni and what makes you different. It's not just because you're in a small town, it's not all of those things, but like just talk about, why your clients stick with you, why they're so loyal, what makes you different. If it's a new client who wants to come your way, whether they're in Joburg, London, or Cape Town, I assume you're still taking on new clients, so, but why would they come to you and not their local accountant down the drag?
I would say that we are reliable. And
Mm,
we stick to our promises. We're very
mm,
solution orientated. So, you might often, and I see this often, in fact, I saw it last week,
mm,
where, you go to your accountant or your tax advisor and they just like sprue out a whole lot of legal jargon to you. And,
mm,
the client doesn't understand it. They need sort of colloquial, okay,
mm.
let's get down to the basics and let's try get through this and understand it. So we're very understanding of where the client is coming from, where
Yeah.
they are in the evolution of their business, and we're not just a generic accountant that's just going to do the compliance. We recognize other areas, and they may not even be accounting and tax related, but we have a relationship with someone who can help you if it's a marketing
Mm,
person or if it's a tech person. So it's
mm,
really about being reliable, we're empathetic, we're authentic,
mm.
and we are solution orientated. And
Yeah,
we'll
I
never leave you
absolutely
high
love
and
that.
dry.
Yeah. And I think
And
there's something in
yeah.
that about, whether it's the Eastern Cape or it's a small town. I mean, anyone I know who's come from the Eastern Cape, it is about like stuff, the jargon, like speaking language that people understand, the importance of
Mm.
relationships. And that's so easy to get lost in a big city. You get busy and it's transient and all of those sorts of things. And I do think it does make a difference. And if you can take that and carry that with you wherever you are in the world, I still think it resonates with people. And today it's particularly challenging. You've got social media, you've got networks. I look at my kids and how they engage with, their friends at school and all of that. And I think society is desperately, desperately seeking out real and authentic relationships. That's why I think things like AI and what have you, from an accounting point of view, it might help do some of the heavy lifting, but it's never going to remove the need for actually having, an accounting team who's in your corner, who protects you from an unexpected tax bill, who, you know, prompts you in unplanned sort of ways. And I think that's really, really important. And I just love that. I think that's why, obviously we partner with you guys. That whole notion of referring clients, like in a small town, when something is beyond your expertise, or there's a specialist who does that better, and it's about referring amongst the community. I mean, so those are principles which are just almost ingrained in the way you guys do business. And I think your clients appreciate that, right?
They
If you can't
do.
do something, you'll be the first to put up your hand and say, listen, actually, you know, if we're rowing a boat, you're probably better off having Simon in your, in your 8-man team rather than you.
Correct. Yeah. And Simon is so good at so many things, and I like to think I'm good at so many things, but I wouldn't dare venture down his lane, and he wouldn't venture down my lane. And obviously our staff are the same. But
Yeah.
what you say is also we are living in a world that is it's overwhelming regulation right now. And for us
Mm.
too, as practitioners, there's
Yeah.
overwhelming regulation that not one human can possibly know. So if I was to tell you what our biggest challenge is, it's not really about a small town thing. It's about the amount of regulation that is being thrown in our
Mm.
direction,
Yeah.
from every possible angle. We're drowning in it. And
Mm.
obviously, because we're drowning in it, our clients are drowning in it. So we're doing our best to absorb
Yeah.
them from that blow. So we're taking a lot of that regulation on ourselves. It's
Mm.
with a lot of pressure.
Mm.
I do find I would really love if the professional bodies would recognize the amount of pressure they're putting on the small guys. The big
Mm.
four, they can handle it. They've got a whole compliance team. First
Yeah.
of all, we can't afford to have a whole compliance team. But so what ends up happening, we are spending a lot of time on
Mm.
just complying with the regulation, which our clients are too. I really
Yeah.
hope that at some point sense prevails and that there's some alleviation for small business. And
Yeah.
I certainly will be working with our professional bodies and my colleagues to try and see how we can do that.
Yeah. And
So I'm
it's
going
not
to
just a South
fight
African.
on behalf of my clients. Yeah. Sorry.
Absolutely. And it's not just a South African problem. I mean, it's
Yeah.
globally, the small businesses are the cornerstone, in terms of, employment opportunities, in terms of economic foundations, yet it's becoming increasingly more difficult in terms of regulation. I look at our clients in the UK, even in the US, there's so many things you need to think about, and there's a fine for this and a penalty for that. And I guess you guys carry that, right? And have to kind of
Yeah.
educate your clients so it is challenging. Um, I want to kind of bring the sort of discussion to a bit of a close. And one thing we do, I'm going to give you an opportunity, Candice, just to kind of leave some closing thoughts. But one of the things we do with all our guests is we do sort of a series of rapid fire questions. Um, and it's designed to put you a little bit on the spot, but also just designed to kind of, just share a little bit of a light on the real you. So I hope you're ready. Just one word answer, what comes to mind, and we're going to kick off. Okay. So,
Okay. I'll do my best.
what's your favorite business book and why?
There's a book called How to Work with Complicated People by Ryan Leake, and it's a personality book.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
I must check that out. Ryan Leak, How to Work with
Leake,
Complicated People.
L-E-A-K. Yes,
I think
yes,
I must
yeah,
give that to my team. Maybe they'll help
yes.
understand me a little bit better. Okay, one habit that keeps you grounded.
Walking on the beach in Kenton in the morning with my dog.
Fantastic. Do you stay in Grahamstown or do you stay just down the
I've
drag in
just moved
Kenton?
to Kenton now, so
Okay.
it's a fairly new habit, but I do wake up at 5 every morning,
Yeah.
and I do my gym, I do my walk on the beach, and then I get to Grahamstown, or I work from Kenton. Yes.
In about 30 minutes, but you're not sitting in bumper to bumper traffic,
No,
right?
it's lovely. I listen to podcasts and I use that time constructively.
Fantastic. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
This is Steve Jobs. It originates from Steve Jobs. Focus on three things that you want to achieve in one day, and you know what that is, and
Mm.
ignore the noise until you've achieved those three things.
I love that. I mean, life is so busy and
Mm,
my co-founder was just in Graham. It's about focus. There's so much we can do, but just
yeah.
focus. Pick three things and
Yes.
just keep aiming in that direction. If you weren't in accounting or tax, what would you be doing?
I'd be a photographer. I love photography.
So maybe that's your next career. Yeah. Art
I think
gallery
so.
and
I hope so. I'm hoping I'm going to do more of the marketing and then I'll just take all the photos. Yeah.
fantastic. We've probably covered this already, but what is the one thing that you love about being based in a small town?
Community, community, community.
Fantastic. And then, Candice, before we wrap, we've spoken a lot about your background, your journey, about Omni. If you could leave one or two pieces of advice for anybody listening to the show, whether it's an SME owner, whether it's accountant building out a practice, yeah, what is that sort of one thing that you wish more business owners knew about their finances or about business in general?
It's really important that when you start a business, you're already thinking about selling it. So
Mm,
I'm not to say that you're going to sell it, but you've always have to have in mind, how do I make my business the most valuable proposition it can possibly be? And we're so
mm,
busy looking at the rearview mirror that you forget to look at the where's your compass taking you? And
mm,
you it always brings you back to that line. It's not a straight line, and obviously you're going to veer off it, but you have to
mm,
have a compass. And
mm,
if you don't keep that in mind, you may as well not start a business, in my view.
mm. I absolutely love that. So that might not, as you say, we talk about valuation, and obviously that's our key focus is helping
Mm.
helping business owners understand what are the things that create value. And value may not necessarily be a number. It might be, a life of freedom, for instance.
Lifestyle.
It might be something else, and just defining that and understanding what that looks like. I mean, so many people are like, oh, I want $100 million business, but what does that actually mean? You got $100 million, you played 6 rounds of golf, you've retired, and then what? So it goes beyond just that number.
And that's
Candice,
why I've loved working with you guys, because it is such an important part
mm,
of being an entrepreneur. And
yeah.
we've really enjoyed working with you guys too. So thank you for that. You've said you also seem to have the same value proposition as us, and we're looking forward to lots of interaction in the future.
Fantastic. So, Candice, we sort of come an end to the session, and yeah, I said that was the last question I'm going to ask you. But talking about that vision, we're coming to the end of 2025 now. So we're recording this in December. I'm just time stamping it in case somebody listens to this in March or April or whenever next year. But what is it about next year and the 2 to 3 years ahead that excites you about Omni? You've built a great business, you're serving your customers, but what's next for you? What's your vision over the next sort of 3 to 5 years?
We're very lucky because we are in a very significant growth stage right now.
Mm,
So the key is to manage that growth uh, in the best possible way for the best possible outcome for the entire
mm,
team. We want to be we by this time next year, because obviously growth is always a little bit disruptive. We hoping to have achieved certainly the KPIs we've set for ourselves, and to
mm.
have a very happy team to be the employer of choice. And so those are our goals for the next year. And so we've got some work to do, but I think we're going to get there. We're very excited.
Fantastic. I just love the clarity. I love the purpose, and it's things which I think, yeah, bring people together. I think everybody can relate to those things. It's doesn't have to be a grand plan to take over the world. It's to do what you do and do it well and do it better. And that I'm sure resonates with a lot of your clients. So, Candice, it's been an absolute pleasure having you today. Your story, your background, your firm's model, the value that you bring to your clients, and I just think the authenticity and the humanity in your story. So, you know, thank you for being with us today. To our listeners, thank you for joining in. If you're an SME who's looking for a partner that goes beyond compliance, even though, as Candice said, compliance is a big thing, please go and visit omni.co.za. So it's omne.co.za. I'm Graham Stephen from bizvalglobal.com. And until next time, keep building value and look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you.